Welcome once again to the channel. Today's video we are going to be looking at how to build this technical documentations web page. Okay, and so today's video we are going to be building a React technical documentations page. Okay, so you could modify this project to your preference. You could build it for any other programming language that you may prefer. So you could build it to Python, C# or any other programming language or framework. It could even be Vue or Angular. Okay, yeah, so the way I wanted to look at this project is as one main grid container that contain other two main containers that we are going to split into these individual sections. Okay, so you will look at this section right here, React documentation, that has this black background to be kind of our navigations bar. Okay, so this is what we'll use to navigate through the individual sections, and this is just to show the particular subject that you are navigating to. So we have hello world, and then we have our program introducing you to JSX. Okay, so we are going to take this content from the React documentation, so there's nothing you are not going to write this all by yourself. We'll just copy them and paste into our markup. This project is going to be written entirely in HTML and CSS. We wouldn't be using JavaScript. Right, so welcome to the our text editor. In this case I'm using Visual Studio Code. If you are in another text editor, that's just fine. So some may be using Vim, Sublime Text, or Atom. Is all based on preference, but I do love to use Visual Studio Code. So we just have the technical doc, which is just one folder where we'll be creating all of the HTML files and all of the CSS files. Okay, so all of this is going to be one HTML file, and then we'll just have one CSS file, and then that is it for the project. We have our navigation, and then we have the main documentations web page, which contains the actual content that pertains to the individual subject that we have laid out here as the navigation. Okay, yeah, so if you are new here and you like building projects, this is kind of a practice project with HTML and CSS. So if you are just starting out, or you've already started and you would like to enjoy some fun projects, make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell. If you have questions, leave them in the comment section and I'll be available to reply to all of them. And with that said, let's just get on to writing some code. I also do want you to note that the project is fully responsive. So if we inspect all elements using the Google Chrome's developer tool, we can inspect for different screen sizes right here. And as you can see, and feel free to remodify this to your preference and write it. You can rewrite the media queries. Okay, but we will be doing this all of that in this particular project. You could also use the responsive the dimensions by just select individual devices that you may want to check the project on. Choose any device of your choice, and then you can just check the responsiveness of the project. I do have a video on how to check the responsiveness of a web page using this tool right here. Okay, so the mobile simulator tool, you could check that video out. I'll leave a link in the description to the video if you want to check it out. All right, so with that said, let's just get back and write some code. First thing we want to do is to create our folders and files. Okay, so as I already said, this entire project is going to be written in HTML and CSS. So the only files that we are going to need is HTML and then CSS. So basically with the extension of .css and that of .html. Okay, so we'll be writing our markup first. So we just wanted to create a new file, and then we are going to name it index.html. Alright, and then I wanted to create a folder and just name it CSS, and inside that folder put in a file there called style .css, and this should be very familiar because the very first few projects that we built on this channel, this setup was done. So it's just basically the same pattern that we are going to use. Open the HTML file and generate the HTML boilerplate. Okay, so you can just use exclamation and tab, and that should generate all of the HTML boilerplate. So we basically have the header section and the body where we'll be putting all of the content. Okay, so one thing we want to do is we can just title our document. So let's just call it technical documentation, and then you can just call it technical documentation page. You can add the S here, technical documentation page, just beneath the title or above the title, just around the metadata. You can add your links. Okay, so yeah, let's add a link to our CSS file, and then we are going to have this link to the css slash tile.css. Okay, so now yeah, we have access to our css, and then we just want to go into the body and begin to lay out our page. Okay, so as I already showed you earlier, we are going to have one main grid container that contains these individual classes, the main body of the page and that of the navigation. Okay, in the body, all we want to do is to have that class of grid. Okay, that is going to wrap around these individual containers, and then the next thing we want to do is to lay out the other parts of the page. Okay, so we have the navigation bar, so I want to use the HTML semantic tag nav, and then what we want to do is we want to give an ID of navbar, and we can also give it a class of subnav. Okay, and then we want to put in a header which is for this React documentations. Okay, so let's give it a header, and then let's give it React documentations. Let's give this a class of main header. Let's call it main header, and let's just add this class of button. Okay, all right. So once this has been done, inside the same navigation, we want to put in the list of nav links that we want. So that will be an unordered list with some LIs and anchor tags. Okay, so the UL, and then we can just have some LIs that will contain anchor tags, and then so in here we'll have the introduction. So just stay tuned. Introduction, and I'm just going to copy that and paste so right from the introductions, all I have to add is hello world. Okay, so we are just going to lay it out as it appears in this part of the page. So right after hello world, we want to go to introducing JSX, and the next one is all right. So that is it for the list items. So that is it for all of the LIs with their anchor tags. So the other thing we want to add is to add a way to reference this particular part of the page. Okay, so we want to be able to click on introduction and be able to scroll all the way to the other section of or to the section that correspond to the introductions. Okay, let's just demonstrate that so that you can see. So if you click on hello world, and then you see that the whole page scrolls up to that point. Okay, so that's exactly what we want to do, but since we haven't written the main sections yet or the main content area yet, we just want to add a hashtag here, and then we want to just add introduction. Okay, so just for now type it in the way you see it, so that um we can reference it later. Okay, so let me just move this back a bit. All right, so now as you can see, we have the nav area completed. All right, so the next thing we want to do is to lay out the main section. Okay, so that is the section that has a lot more content to write. So we'll just go ahead and do that section. Okay, so for this section we want to put in a div of main doc, and inside this main document we need to have sections. Okay, so we'll have individual sections for the introduction, hello world, introducing JSX, and so these sections will carry the content. Okay, so it will carry a title for that particular area, and that of the content that pertain to that particular section. Okay, so now that we have that, we want to do a section, and then we want to give them classes. Okay, so this will just give a main, and then we'll call it main dash section. Okay, and since these are going to be very specific to particular sections, we want to give them an ID. Okay, so that this ID will always reference this particular ID, so that anytime we click on this, we have exactly we are able to navigate to that particular section. I don't know if that makes sense. Okay, so in this particular section, I want to give it an ID, or an ID of let's call it introduction. Okay, and basically that's all. Now this list item, whenever it's clicked, will reference this particular section. Okay, so let's just save that, and let's view our work in progress on live server. Right. Okay, so basically this is all we have for the main for the page, and don't worry about it, we'll style it later in the video, but for now we are just getting things off the ground. Okay, yes, so let's look at this particular section. We'll have a header of introduction, and then it will just go in that manner till we have the rest in. But so if you look at this section here, let's go to the main page. It has the title, and it has some content right here, and it has some two list. Okay, so it has two bullet points here that we can see. Okay, so that's exactly how we are going to lay it out. Okay, so for this particular section, what we want to do is to give it a header, and then we can give it that header of introduction. Okay, so let's give it a header, and let's give the content as introduction, and then we have a class, and then we're just going to name it main dash header. Okay, so one thing you will note is some of these classes will be global, they will be reused in other places. So if you come right up here, you can see that React documentation in the navigations header has the same class. Okay, so any styling we apply to this particular class will automatically be applied to this particular class as well. So in that case, we don't have to write any other CSS for this particular class. Okay, So now for the main content, I'm going to wrap that in an article. Okay, in that article, I'm just going to have two paragraph tags. Okay, so these are two paragraphs. So we have paragraph one. I'm going to show you that quickly. That ends here, and then we have the second paragraph that will go in for that. So I'm just going to have two paragraphs. So I'm going to have P, and then we can just come to the finished product and we'll copy that. Okay, now for those of you following, you are probably wondering where you will get this as well to copy. Okay, so I'll leave a link in the description to the final project if you want to copy and paste the exact same content, and then so that we can just continue with the project with so that I wouldn't have to type all this in. Okay, so I'm just copy and pasting, and the next thing we can see here is this to unordered list, right? Okay, so I'm just going to add a UL, and then that should have some LIs. Okay, and then that LI will contain this. I'm pasting it there, and that as well. Okay, so this is also another li, so we're just going to add another list item. Okay, and then we are pasting the content of that list items. But if you save and then you go to the page, this is currently how it is laid out. We'll use CSS in a bit to kind of give it that nice look that we are seeing over there. Okay, now then right from this page, the next thing we want to do is, let's get to the final project. We want to build in the hello world page. Okay, so let's head to our editor once more, and outside of the first section, we want to have another section for the hello world. Okay, so we can have a section, and I'm sure the class name will be hello world. Okay, so we have a section with the class of hello world. Okay, so we'll have a section, and that section will have the same class of main that section, and with an ID that corresponds to that particular section. So we're going to just go section, and then we dot let's call it main that section, and we know that it's going to have an ID of hello underscore world. Okay, so let's just call it hello underscore world, and then tap. Okay, so that should just generate all of that for us. And now what we want to do is to write in the content. So we have if we go to hello world, we have this the title, then we have this small tag, and then we also have the coding, the content. Okay, so we have this code displayed right here, and then the next thing is some write up about the hello world. Okay, so that's exactly what we are going to do. So to do that, we will first of all write the header, which is hello world, and then we'll put a span, and then we have this small text. This is the smallest, this is what the smallest examples looks like. Okay, so let's just go there, and then we have we will have a header with a class of main that's header. Okay, so we have header, and then main, and then we're just calling it that's header. And then what we want to do is we want to call this hello world. Okay, and that's it for the header of this particular one. And now what we're going to do is, we for every section we add an article, and then that contains the content of that particular section. Okay, so in this case we are just going to have a span, and that span will take in this text of the smallest example looks like this. And so let's just get into writing that particular section. So I'm going to put a span, and then in that span I'm going to put a small tag, and in the small tag I'm just going to write the smallest, and this is not how they spell smallest example looks like this. All right, and that is it for this particular span. And what I want to do is to now write that particular code, and for that reason I'm going to put it in a div with a class of code. Within this div with a class of code, that's where I'm going to be representing this code. Okay, so we are going to type this code in a style that allows it to appear exactly the way it is here on the page. Okay, so yeah, so I'm going to use prev, and within the prev I'm just going to add code, and this code I'm just giving it a class of language that's JS, and then within that we are going to put in the code. Okay, so as you can see it's React DOM dot render. Okay, and then within the render we want to be able to style it, so we use this ampersand LT, then you have a semicolon there, and then you can put in the H1. Okay, this gives it the opening brackets, or the opening brackets to the code, and then we also have ampersand GT column that gives it the closing of that bracket, and then we have hello world, and then we just have the same thing, and this time GT. Okay, and then we will have a black backslash to close that, and then the same thing, GT and column. Okay, and so put a comma there, and the last part of the code will be document dot get element by ID. Okay, so we're going to document dot get element by ID. Okay, and we are looking for the ID of root. Now this may be some React stuff, is just for the purpose of this course that we are writing this, and then we can save. Let's get back to our working directory and look at it. This is kind of the representation we'll style it to get that look that we have. Okay, and now, so since we are done with that part of the code, it also does have some content, a paragraph, and some other list items. Okay, so let's just head back to our editor, and right outside that div, the class of code, and inside the article, what we want to do is to put in the paragraph tag. Okay, so we just have the paragraph, and then within that paragraph let's just paste in this text. So let's copy the text right here. Now you have the final project, so you could also feel free to use the file, and inside it you can see we have try it on CodePen, which is a link, so I'm going to add that to it. So let's look at how we can do that. We are going to make it a link. However, we may not paste in any URL to this. Okay, so as you can see, it doesn't go anywhere. So that's what I'm going to do. And then the way I want to do is to give it that italic styling. So I'm going to do em, and then I'm going to put that anchor tag too as well. And then what I'm just going to do is to cut this part of the code and paste it there. Okay, so you don't really have to do this if it's not that necessary, but as you can see, that appears as a link. Okay, we have the two list items here. So I'm going back to the text editor, and just beneath the paragraph tag we have some two URLs that will have two list items. Okay, so the two list items, and so we can come back to this, and then we can just grab the text. Okay, now I could have been typing all of this, but that would take this video way longer than it's supposed to, so that's why I'm just typing them in. Okay, now once those are done, we can move on to the next section, which is introducing JSX. So let's look at how we can do that. And then so basically each section is the same, so you don't really have to worry that much. Okay, so we have a section. I might as well just pause the video and type them in. Okay, so for the next two sections, I'm just going to copy it and paste from the final project. Okay, so which you have access to, so you can just reference it. Other than that, the video will take way longer than we expect. Okay, so so for the next section, I'm just going to copy and paste, and then I'll copy and paste the code for the other sections as well. Okay, all right, so this is the code for the last two sections, introducing you to JSX. It's kind of the same similar thing. Okay, and then that's the code, and then we have the last part of this thing, which is rendering JSX. And if you go to the final project, you can see that the last thing on this page is rendering JSX, but we do have even way more list items for you to work with, so you can then add all of the content that correspond to the individual list or the individual subject, and then expand your project to be a fully fledged a full-fledged technical documentations web page. Okay, so now we have all our HTML written. You can check everything out here, and then the next thing I want us to do is to go ahead and start writing the styling. All right, so now that we are done writing the HTML, the next thing I want us to focus on is styling of the page. Okay, so as you can see, this is our working directory, and this is just the HTML file that we have. Okay, so let's look at writing CSS and repositioning our application to look exactly like this. Okay, so let's just kickstart. Okay, so in our CSS file, the first thing we want to do is write the base styling. Okay, so we have this the base styling, and then we want to set the margin to 0. Let's just set the margin to 0, padding to 0, and then what we want to do is we want to also give it a box sizing of border box. Okay, all right, now I want to also give it the body, the entire body of the web page, some styling, and then that will mean giving it a font family of Arial and Helvetica, sans serif. And then what are we going to do? Let's give it a line height of 1.6, and also let's background color, let's give it a background color. So in this case, the hex value is f4, and then let's give it a color of a much darker color. Okay, so this, it will be the color of the text. I'm just going to call it CCC. I guess no, 333. So that will be the color of the text, and then let's give it an overflow of hidden. Okay, give it overflow of hidden. Now let's look at some of the styling that we may want to have. Let's go in there and let's style this unordered list and allies. Okay, so all of the unordered list that are in the page, we want to style that. Okay, now we've taken the overflow of hidden, so the page is not scrolling, so we can just remove that overflow feature and then we'll have the ability to scroll our page. So we can just take that off for now, and when necessary we can put it back. Okay, now let's style the UL, and let's set that margin to 1 rem. Let's give it a margin of 1 rem and 0, and let's also give it a padding left of 1.5 rems. Okay, or 1.5 rems, and save. Okay, so now this is kind of what we have here. Let's style all of the li tags. So we can just go with any URLs with LIs, and then we want to set the margin bottom to 1.5 rem. So let's give it a margin as bottom, and let's give that 0.5 rem. Let's style all of the anchor tags. So we have all of our anchor tags, and the first thing we want to do, we want to take all the text decorations to none. So we'll get rid of all of the bullet points, and then want to give it a color too of the same body color. Okay, all right, and then save. So we have this so we still have those bullet points. So what we want to do is, we realize that we have list items in the rest of the page. Okay, so we have to target all of the specific bullets that are applied to the navigation. Okay, so we will do that when we are styling this navigation. So I'm kind of splitting the codes, and what we just wrote is kind of some global styling for the whole page. Okay, and so as a when, and we also want to have some hover effect on all anchor tags. So let's just say column hover, and let's give it a color. So anytime we hover on it, we want to get the color to be dark or black. Okay, right, so that is it for all of the global styling. So now let's go ahead and style our navbar. So we gave it an ID of navbar, and then let's give it a background. And if you looked at the background, it was black. So let's save. So yeah, so now we have a background of black for our navigation. Now the next thing is, we want to set the color to white. So if you can see here, this is not a very nice color because we can't even see this. Okay, so let's give it a color of white, which is FFF, and then let's give it a padding of 1 rem. Let's give it a padding of 1 rem, and let's give it a position of sticky. Okay, so we want it to be at 1 point, position sticky. Let's do this and see. And then what we want to do is, we want to set the top to 0, and then we give it a height of 100 VH. Okay, height of 100 vh, and then the overflow on the y-axis. So this is overflow on the y-axis. We want to set that to auto and save. Okay, all right, so we are still styling. This will get into shape, so we are getting there bit by bit. So let's first of all style this header section of the page. So let's go ahead and write the styling for the header. So let's go with the ID of navbar, and then what we want to access the main dash header section of the navbar. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to set the font size. Okay, and we want that to be 1.5 rem. And then the next thing is we want to give it a margin button. That's bottom of 1 rem as well. And then let's just align the text to center. So we have to do text align, and then we want center. Okay, and then right, so now we have it this way. It's aligned to center, and then let's go with all of the list items that are in this nav bar. So let's go with the ID of nav bar, and then we are looking for all of the unordered list, and then we want to remove all of the list style type to none. List dot style, and then we want to set that to none, and we want to give them a padding of 0, and let's check that out. Okay, so now we have removed all of the bulletins that are on it. So let's also look at all of the LIs. Okay, so let's go with navbar, and then we want to go with the LIs, and then we can just set the margin bottom to 0.5. so let's set a margin bottom to 0.5 rem. Let's go with all anchor tags. So let's go with navbar. Now we are breaking this code into in this manner just so that we it will be easier for us to know exactly at which section of our page the CSS is applying. Okay, so in this case we want to set the color to white. Okay, let's give it a color of white. Okay, so now we have our navigation white, and then let's give it a text decoration of none. Okay, so that we don't have any underline, even though we did set all of them to a text decoration of none, so that took off all of that, so we don't really need to add that here. And then we can just give it also a padding of 0.5 rem, and then let's display block. Let's display it block. Okay, right, now let's save. We can also give it a background and transition because there's some hover effects on it, so let's give it that background. Let's give it a transition, and then we can give it that background. On 0.3 sec. Okay, and save. Now let's go ahead and do the navbar, and then in this case we are looking for the URL, li, anchor tags again, and in this case it's a colon hover, and then on hover we want the background color to change. Okay, so we want to just change the background on hover. And let's set that to this number right here is 57. Oh, 5757. Okay, and save. Yes, so now if we hover on it, you see that color right there, right? um our entire page is black, but that's not the entirety of the page. It is the color that correspond to the nav. Okay, so now the next thing we want to do is we want to start styling our main section. Okay, so let's do that. So main, and then we want to give it a pattern of let's just give it a pattern. So we're going to give it a pattern of 2rem, and then we want to give it a background of white. Okay, so for the main one we want a background of white. Okay, and then so let's set the grade template column. So we want to access the class of grade, and then we want to display it to grade display grade, and then let's set the grade template columns, and then we want it to be a 250 pixels 1fr. So 250 pixel and then 1fr, and then let's give it a mean height of 100 vh. Okay, so mean that height, let's give it 100 vh and save. Okay, yeah. So yeah, so as you can see, we've split the page into two components. We have the main content. As you can see already, our navbar is way in place. Okay, and now the next thing is we are going to continue to style the main section of the page. So I've noticed that from the final project, this section here is a little bit pushed to the right, but in this case we've added the styling for the main section, and yet it's still being stuck to the right and just as close to the navbar, whereas in this case the page is properly laid out. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to go check out that main class. Okay, so let's go to our HTML. Okay, so in our HTML we notice that we are dealing with a class of main.doc. Okay, but instead on our CSS we are just accessing the HTML tag main. So that's kind of the reason why our page is still stuck together. So I'm just going to change that to a class of main.doc. Okay, so if you are following the tutorial, you want to do that corrections so that you don't make that error. Okay, and then we can save. And now let's go back to our project, and you can see that the it's properly aligned right now. All right, so that's a very quick corrections that we had to do. So let's just head straight to the remaining sections. Now I do want to say that from the final project you see that we have some syntax highlighting from for the code that we have. Okay, and so you can see it's kind of the formatting that we get from the code, and the way that we are going to achieve this is through something we call highlight.js. So that's kind of the library we are going to use. So I want you to search in your browser highlight.js.org. All right, and so from what we get from the highlight.js is there's a documentation on this, but I want you to scroll right to the bottom where we have HTML and CSS. So you have as HTML tags, so you can copy the link right here. Okay, so we have the script link, and that's the main.css file. Okay, so let's copy those two links, And right inside our HTML, we want to paste those two links just beneath our CSS file, our CSS link. Okay, so we'll copy that and save. Now let's head back to the same highlight.js, and then we'll copy the script tag. Okay, so we want to put that at the bottom of our HTML page because you don't want any script file to load before your page. So let's go down there and let's paste it in. Okay, so from now we can add styling that will kind of show the page. So once saved, let's go check our page out. This is the final product, and as you can see, we have a little bit of automatic styling that has been applied to all of the code elements in our page. Okay, next thing we want to do is we want to style this background, this container here. So we did give it a class of code, so everything that is wrapped in the code class. So if you come to the HTML file, you have code, and then we have most of our code written down there. Okay, and then we have those text beneath each of the code, and then we'll be styling that as well. Okay, and so as you can see, we've given them a background and a language. Okay, so we can just style them from there. So what we're going to do is we are going to access the class of code. So let's head to code. So in our CSS, you can just access the class of code, and then we want to change the background to this F4, and then also want to change the padding to 1 rem. So the other thing we want to do is we want to give it a border. Okay, so if you look at the final project, we have a border left that we've given this dark color to. So it's not necessary. If you want to do it, you can do it, otherwise just skip this part. So let's give it a border that's left, and then we want to give that 5 pixels solid, and the hex value is 333, and save. And now let's head back. Okay, so now we have that dark border attached to our code section. Okay, so if you scroll through, anything that was wrapped in a class of code, that styling has been applied. Okay, so now let's finish the rest of the styling. Let's give it an overflow of hidden, or let's give it an overflow that's X, and let's set it to auto, and then let's give it a scroll behavior of auto as behavior. Let's set that to auto as well, and now let's give the border a radius. Okay, so let's give it a border radius, border dash radius. Let's make it 12 pixels, and let's check how that looks like. Okay, so if you look at this and then you look at the final project, we are getting there bit by bit. Okay, so yes, so now we have that of the styling applied to the code sections of our page. And then if you look at the HTML, we have this class of pre. All right, so you have this, and then that's where that small tag is the class of pre, and then we just want to set that to, let's give that a margin. Okay, so this pre wraps around all of the code, and then we want to give that a margin of 0. Okay, so let's get back to our CSS, and so we have the element pre, and let's give it a margin of 0. Okay, so if you want to be specific, you can just add a class. Okay, code, and then we have the margin of 0. What we want to do next is to style this text right here. Okay, so if you look at the final project, we have individual backgrounds for different text. So we have that of yellow, and then we have that of blue. And actually in our code content. Let's get to our HTML. Let me show you what that means. So you see that we have this paragraph with a class of code that's background yellow, and then we have the last paragraph with the code that's background of blue. Okay, so that's how we are going to start that one as well. So let's go to dot code as background. You could use much simpler names so that it will be easier to background of yellow, and then all we are going to do is actually give it that background of yellow, or is it orange? So let's use background as color, and let's what's the hex value is ff 3fs b, this will be 8b0. All right, so that's the color. Now we want to give it a padding of 1 rem. Also want to give it a margin of 1 rem, F10 button, top and button to be 0. So we have margin 1 rem and 0. We also want to give it a border left. Okay, so just like we have the borders here, we want to also give it that border. All right, so if you look at the final product, this one has a border, but then we haven't changed the border radius, we just left it like that. Okay, so let's give it a border left, and let's set that to 3 pixels solid, and the color is going to be the same. Okay, and let's save. Okay, right, so now if you see that paragraph that had a class of background yellow has been applied, and so the next thing we want to do is to access the one with the background of blue. Okay, so the best thing is to just copy the class from your HTML so you don't make any mistakes. So let's copy that, and right here can paste it. Okay, and then one thing you want to note is the colors are different, so we want to set the background. You can basically copy the first one and paste, and then edit the colors. Okay, so this is E0F7FA. Okay, that's the color we are using here. We also give it a pattern of 1 rem. So if you want to just copy this and then just paste it for this next one and to apply. Okay, so yeah, so that is it. Our main page is complete, and the next thing we want to do now is to write the media queries. Okay, so if we inspect the page on other devices, let's see how it is. Wow, it does stack very well, but then we can't see the content of our main page. Let's see. Yeah, so this doesn't look very good. So what we want to do is to go ahead and write the media queries. We are going to write the media queries, so we'll start from the much larger screens like tablet. So you can just have add media, and then what you can add max width. So we have the max width, let's give that 768 pixels, and then let's start. So with the grid container, we want to just set it to 1FR. Let's set the grid templates columns to 1FR, and let's write that of the navbar. So for mobile screens and tablets, we want the navbar and the content to still share, but if the screen size gets lower, we want this nav to appear on top of the main page. Okay, so let's do that for the nav. So it has an ID of navbar, and let's set the height to auto. Okay, and now let's give it a position relative. Let's set that to relative, and let's move stuff around. resolution relative, and then let's give it a width of 100% of its container, and also let's give it a padding of 1 rem. Okay, so let's give it padding of 1 rem. And now what we want to do is we want to also give access the mains. So let's first of all look at the application on tablets, not source code. Let's look at the application on tablets. So for an easier to look, we can just go with an iPad Pro, and yeah, so this is how it looks like. So now let's go in here and let's style the main document. So we want to style this part of the document as well. So let's do dot main dash doc, and let's give it a padding of 1 rem. Okay, of 1 rem, and save. Right, so yeah, this looks better on tablet. Now let's check the app on phones. Yeah, so this is currently the look on phones. It's not bad, but then let's add a little bit of styling for mobile devices. Okay, so let's see for other devices. Let's see for an iPhone SE, looks good. Let's see what's again. Surface Duo, yeah, but you can also test it on this using these tabs here. Alright, so let's add some media query for mobile devices. So we have at media, and then we have our max dash width, and let's set that to 480 pixels. Let's start with the navbar, so let's go with navbar, and let's set the width to 100%, and let's give it a padding of 1 rem as well. And then we want to also start the main dash doc. The same thing, we're giving it a padding of 1 rem. And the next thing we want to do is to start the main headers. Okay, so let's give it the main dash header. We want to give it a font size of 1.5 rem, and that of a margin right of 270 pixels. Okay, so let's give it a font size of 1.5 rem, and then let's set the margin right to 270 pixels. Okay, so that's for the main, that's header, and let's start the main sections. Okay, so all of the main sections. Okay, and let's give that a margin bottom of 1 rem. Okay, so let's also start all of this with a class of code. Okay, so we want to also style this. We want them to appear much better on mobile devices. Okay, let's inspect. Let me show you how they look like now. So if we take any mobile device, yes, so this is how they look, and then we want to make them look better. So let's a code, so let's access that class of code, and let's give it a padding of 0.5 rem, and also let's give them a border left of 2 pixels solid, which is already applied from the main one, so we don't have to. So as you can see, the content is way outside, and then you have to scroll all this way to get it. Okay, so so let's give it a border left, but that styling will come from the main, so we don't really need it. So let's just get rid of that, and let's target all the articles. Okay, so everything that within the article, we want to set the word wrap, because as you can see, there's it's going beyond the page. If let's zoom it out this way, and then you can see it. Okay, so let's set the word that's wrap to wrap. Okay, so we want to break word. Okay, so that if it has to exceed one, the words to break, and then continue from the next line. Okay, right. So now the last thing we want to do, and then we are done with this particular project, is the main document, main header. Okay, so they want to get the main doc and the main section main header. Okay, and we are just going to set the width to 100%. Okay, and save. Okay, so if we refresh our page, yes, so now you can see we don't have those word breaks there. Let's see for other devices. iPad mini. Yep, this looks good. Let's see for an iPhone SE. That looks good as well. Let's test it for the iPhone 12 Pro. Okay.